In my recent review of Hornby's latest Eurostar offering, the biggest issue I found was the impact of the traction tyres on my track. The level of deposits on the track was the worst I've ever seen. If the Eurostar was going to continue to have a long-term home in my layout, the traction tyres would have to go. Hi, thanks for joining today's video. What I'm going to cover today is do an introduction with regard to traction tyres. Why are they there? What are the issues that I had with the Eurostar set related to the traction tyres? What other potential options could I have looked at? Then we'll get into the removal of the existing wheels that contain the traction tyres and replacing those. And that's probably going to be the most involved part of the process here. We'll then take a look at the performance after actually doing the enhancement. So with the traction tyres removed, we'll take a look at the performance, and we'll take a look at the performance with the existing weight in the driving car, and then with some added weight to see what sort of difference that gives. Then at the end I'll give my kind of final thoughts and kind of what are the pluses and minuses, look at the results that I got in the performance testing, and give a kind of final determination as to what you might want to do. Okay, let's get underway. So the first thing is, why do traction tyres exist at all, and why are they used on locomotives? The first bullet there really is covering the main reason. It's to avoid and reduce any kind of wheel slip when you're actually pulling any sort of load and attempting to accelerate the locomotive on your railroad, and also if you've got any sort of an incline. There isn't a lot of friction. You've got metal wheels running on metal rails, and where there's quite a light body in the locomotive, you really do need something then that's going to give you a level of traction, and that's what traction tyres do. They do allow higher train speeds to be attained. So in the case of the Eurostar set, they allow you to get up to that prototypical 300 kilometers per hour speed on your layout, which you can't really achieve without them. So that's something it does allow. And in general, the reason they're used is to allow the cost of the locomotive to be kept to a minimum. It means you can avoid having to have dual bogie drive. You can reduce the weight of the locomotive. You can use a cheaper motor in the locomotive. It basically gives you a better return in terms of the speed and pulling performance of the locomotive versus cost. Now, it does come at a price, however. And these are the kind of issues that I had. The whole issue of deposits on the track. This is a problem with traction tyres at the best of times. But when you're running a high-speed train like the Eurostar set, it's particularly worse, particularly on the curves, because that's where the greatest stress actually occurs. So I noticed after every individual running session I did when I did my original videos, the track was absolutely filthy and needed to be cleaned. And that obviously causes problems for all the other trains that are going to run on your layout. So if you're going to contaminate your main line by running a high-speed running session with this, that's really not on, and then you've got to go and clean your track. I also had problems with stalling and shorting over the Pico Express points, and you can see that in the video here. I kind of was able to live with that, because if you ran at a fast enough speed, you'd get through the points. There'd be an intermittent short, but it would be so quick that you wouldn't notice it. If you're running at low speed, however, the locomotive would stall and would short, and you'd have to go and reset your DCC controller or your DC power supply. And in general, I found poor low speed performance with the Eurostar set. It really wasn't great. It was a bit stuttery when it started and it came to a stop. You can see that in the videos. And really that's, again, not good, and not a good running experience, and not a very enjoyable running experience. Fantastic high speed, no doubt about that, so the thing can run at that prototypical high speed. But these are three serious issues, and probably number one is probably the deal breaker for me, because the level of increased maintenance on your track as a result of the traction tyres really just makes it intolerable. So what are the options? So here I've got a close-up view of the traction tyre wheel. It's a different type of wheel to the standard wheel that you have on the train. And it has got this extra groove that contains the traction tyre. This groove has a couple of effects. It's the outside of this groove is actually what was causing the short on the Pico points. So this particular wheel was the problem for the Pico point issue that I had. You can see the traction tyre in there, and it's actually quite worn already. So these traction tyres do wear out over time. So as well as depositing themselves on your track, they do wear out and you have to replace them. You can see on the right hand side there with the traction tyre actually removed. Some people propose just running with the wheel as it is here. Now there's an issue with that. that actual outer groove on the wheel, that will catch your track and cause wear on your track over time. You'll still have that issue with the pico points, for example, and you may have issues with other points as well, because you don't have the traction tire now filling in there and raising this up over the rail. This is now sitting lower in the rail, and it could potentially cause problems on other points. I don't really think there's a long-term proposal to run with this, and I have seen some people, and some people will debate that, you know, it runs fine for them, and maybe if you're running the train intermittently, that might be okay, but that really wasn't good enough for me, and it wasn't going to fix the pico point issue, for example. Now, people do propose using a product here which has got this unfortunate name, and I suppose this product does provide you with a means of providing your own sort of traction tire and applying it yourself to the wheel. Again, some people propose actually filling in that groove on the drive wheel there with this material. For me, that's still not going to fix the pico point problem that I had. And anyway, I'm not really keen on adding another substance to my rails. No, I wouldn't rule it out depending on your needs, and I'll kind of come back to this when I come to the summary. But for me, I ruled this out up front. I really wasn't going to go with any sort of material on the actual wheels. I wanted to have my plain wheels on the track, so I got no risk of getting any dirt on the track. And then I wanted to take a look at the performance and see where that got me. Also looking at putting some extra weight into the body of the driving car. Okay, so that's where we get off. So to get into this, I do have to buy a replacement set of wheels, because I need to get rid of these two wheels that are on the two main drive axles. There's a traction tire on each of the two drive axles in the driving bogie. So those need to be replaced, so I need to have some donor wheels, and so I put in an order to Hornby. I'll put a link in the description. These are the set of wheels here, which is a Eurostar full set of wheels for your power car. Now, interestingly enough, the quality of these wheels isn't as good as the quality of the wheels on the set. Now, for what I needed to use, they're adequate, and I'll talk about this when we get into the removal. So you do need to buy them, because you do need something to replace. You might pick up some wheels second-hand as well. That might be fine on eBay. That's grand. You don't need new drive wheels, so the two drive wheels that are here, they're part of the set, but I won't be using them. I'm going to be using the two other wheels, which are on the other bogie of the drive car. I'm going to be using those. I'm going to be swapping those with the actual wheels on the existing rear dummy car on the set, because those wheels will be equivalent, the exact same equivalents to what are used on the actual set itself. So we'll see that when we get into the removal and installation phase. Okay, so that's it. You know, this is the option we're going to go with. We're going to actually physically replace the two traction tire wheels on the drive bogie and put in, let's say, a replacement wheel that does not have traction tires and doesn't have any of that groove or anything like that. Okay, let's get into doing that process. Okay, now we're going to get into the main part of the video. So the first thing we want to do is get the two axles from the dummy car. We want to swap these out with the two purchased axles that we got from the set that we purchased from Hornby. The axles from Hornby are of a lower quality, unfortunately, but they'll do fine on the dummy car. And the two axles we're taking out here will contain wheels that are of the same quality as what are on the driving car. So we'll be using those as the donor wheels. So we'll just pop in the two axles we got. So that's fine, they're installed now and we can use those. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to remove the two live axles from the power car. So these are the two axles that contain the traction tires that we'll be removing. So we'll just pop these out. We need a screwdriver actually with these ones, just to gently take them out. We don't want to damage the socket that they sit in. So that's the first out, and we'll take out the second one, the rear one now. So let's get that guy out. And just gently ease up each wheel. And we'll have the two of these out. Okay. Alright, so that's that phase of the process. So just take a look at this now. We're actually just going to pull off the silicone rubber traction tire just to show you. There it is. Pretty thin and small, and we've already seen this in the blowed up views. This is the wheel that we're going to have to remove now. It's the one that was containing the traction tire. So this is This is what we'll be taking off each of these two of the drive axles. So to perform the operation, we actually need to create this little jig. You may have enough strength to pull these wheels off yourself, but most people won't. So you'll need to actually use a little jig to take them off. This is the dimensions of the wooden jig that I'm going to use. I'm going to use then a small tool, which I've got out of a drill bit set actually, and it's a small flathead tool, and you can see the dimensions of it there. It's 150 mil. Anything up to about 170 mil is fine. That'll be just the right size to actually hammer through the middle of the wheel there, but literally push through the axle so that you can separate the wheel from the axle. So this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be removing the traction tire wheel, and we're going to be replacing it with the donor wheel. So the first thing we want to do is get the donor wheels off. So we put into our little tool here. We use two little metal strips to hold the wheel in place. We get the hammer, and we're going to literally punch through the axle through the middle. It comes out very quickly, and there we go. We've got our wheel removed from the axle. So that's the first of our donor wheels, and we'll do the same thing for the second of the donor wheels. Yeah, just repeating this for the second one. And again, just put the tool into the middle. If it's got a flat head, ideally, it'll sit there, and then you can just do one little rap with the hammer and usually get this through. So I need to give this one a couple. That's fine, and it comes through. So there we got the two. We've got the two donor wheels now. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go and remove the wheel with the traction tires, and same process. This is held in much more strongly, so you need to hit it a little bit stronger, and there we go, and he's out. So we've freed up one of the live axles, and so the next thing, we'll do that for both of the two axles that we removed from the power car. Now we're going to add the donor wheel to the live axle, and we'll just hit it a rap with a hammer just to kind of get it into place initially. We're just measuring it here to make sure that look at the gauge. Now when I measured these at the start, 14.3 was the sort of gauge that I was getting, and we can then use a vice then just to squeeze the two together. This will just pull in the wheel a bit tighter so we can get to the correct gauge. So you want to get somewhere in the region of somewhere between 1430, 1435, and that would be the right gauge to use. So remember the wheel orientation. So when we actually took off the axles originally, would have noted that. And so I've got them here. So install the axles back in. So you want to have the insulated wheel on the same side as you removed it. And we'll just test this with a battery here, and everything seems to be going okay. Just using a 9-volt battery here just to power the motor, so we can test the wheels are running okay. And then you need to insert the second live axle, and it's in the opposite direction to the first one. And that's because the actual gear wheels that it's connecting to are in the opposite direction. So you just need to flip it over. So the insulated wheel will be on the opposite side to the previous axle that you installed. Just pop that guy in, and we're going to test again with the battery. Make sure all is well, and they do seem to be running fine. So I think we're ready to go. We've done our upgrade. We've got the new axles in place, and we can start doing some testing. So just a reminder of the performance of the original set. Here you can see it stalling and shorting on the pico points, for example. Now it's going sufficiently fast that it actually then carries on. But if it was going slower, it would actually stop altogether and create a kind of a permanent short. Now let's look at the difference with the newly installed wheels and the traction tires removed. So we're going to put them right in front and start them from a standing start. And the first thing here is just notice how slow we're able to start the locomotive there. And there she goes. No stalling, no stopping, no issues at all over the pico points. And we're also going at a really slow speed. Now, the next thing is there's a slight slope at the back end of my layout there, and you can see that we're getting a bit of wheel slip. We're on a 6-car rake here, and the 4-car rake actually works fine, but the 6-car rake does show a bit of wheel slip. We're still running with the standard weight in the power car. So we'll bring her through again. Again, you can see her really smooth through the pico points and really running very well there from a smooth perspective. Now when it hits the incline, you can see we're getting a bit of wheel slip and she's stalling. So this is telling us really that we're going to have to put in some extra weight into the park car. There is wheel slip beginning to show there. Now we're going to speed it up next time round, so now we're going up to more of a mid-speed, and you can see that there's no problem with the wheel slip anymore. So we're running at a sufficient speed, a sufficient momentum that the incline is not having any impact. And here we're just cranking this up to the maximum speed to see what the sort of maximum speed we can get, and I'm going to cover that at the very end of this session. I'll talk through exactly what sort of prototypical speeds we achieved in this session. So really we need to add some weight. So we've added some weight to get this up to 435 grams now. And again, we're starting from a standing start here. Really smooth through the pico points again, as we would expect. We wouldn't expect anything different. And the difference here is we're not really seeing the wheel slip. She's continuing to move at the kind of slow pace through that end of the straight. And I'll begin to apply a bit of power now as she gets around the corner, so she will start to speed up, and that's because I'm giving her a little bit of extra power now. But really not seeing the wheel slip that we saw in the previous session with the lower weight. And now coming through again, slightly higher speed, super smooth, really smooth. The running performance at the low end is significantly improved with this, and now we're speeding her up again, running her at the faster speeds. And I guess, again, what I say, we'll cover off exactly what sort of speeds we attained, what the maximum speeds were. So, and then bringing her to a halt here now. So slowing down the speed, going really slow, and we're going to bring her to a stop at the end of the straight. And a really smooth stop. I wasn't able to achieve that on the original set at all. So let's look at the impacts to the maximum speed. I think there's a couple of things here to look at. There's a lot of detail in this table. So this particular slide, we're running with the standard weight here. So it's 309 grams, which is the standard out-of-the-box weight for the power car. And that's what we have here for both. With the 6-car set, with the traction tyres installed, I was getting 298 kilometers per hour, which is, prototypical speed is 300 kilometers per hour. So, and that was with the CV setting there of the maximum speed set to 240. You put that up over 240, you'll kind of get just over 300. So there is a bit of leeway there. So you could have made this actually a little bit faster. With the traction tyres removed and the CV setting at the same level and the weight at the same level, I've kind of done two sets of numbers here, one with a 6-car configuration, one with a 4-car configuration. So you can see here that with the 6-car configuration, the maximum scale speed I can achieve is 244, so it's 18% lower than with the traction tyres. Now, with the 4-car set, it's only 5% lower. So, and I didn't have any of that wheel spin with the 4-car set. It is a little bit lower, it's only 5%, so I think anybody could live with that. So if you're only going to run this with a 4-car set, then really you're probably done. You can finish here. You don't need to look at really adding any weight to the power car. You're going to get good performance, you're going to have clean track, you can have no issues over your peaker points, you can run your 4-car set, and you're only looking at a 5% reduction in overall maximum speed, so which really is nothing. Now, let's move on. So now we're going to move to and look at the difference. Again, we've got the reference here, which is in the orange. And we're going to look at two settings here. One where we've got the maximum speed setting and the DCC controller. We increased it to 255 at the end there. We're running with an extra 126 grams in the power car. So it's a heavier car, and it does feel heavy in the hand. With the 6-car configuration, we can now achieve a higher speed, and we also didn't see that kind of wheel slip at the low speed. So we're getting 261 kilometers per hour, which is only a 12% reduction, so it was 18%, so we've improved that. With the 4-car set, interestingly enough, the maximum scale speed has actually dropped, and we're now seeing an 11% difference. And this is because we've got the heavier power car. It's obviously having an effect on the maximum speed that can be achieved. Now, we're kind of trying to compensate for that by bumping up the CV value, the maximum speed value in the DCC decoder to 255, which is as high as we can go. And with the 4-car set, now we can get that up to 272 kilometers per hour, or 9% reduction. So it's not quite as good. We are taking a hit because we're running with the heavier power car. So really, again, the message is if you're only ever going to run with the 4-car configuration, you don't need to add any weight. if you are going to run with a 6-car configuration, you do need to add some weight, and you will see this reduction here in your performance. So gives you a bit of a an indicator. And really, for most people, you're not going to be running this at maximum speed. And I think the benefits you get in terms of the low speed performance are vastly improved. So what do we think? What's the final thoughts on this and the overall summary? So I think if you look at the case for and against the Traction Tyres, I think with the Traction Tyres installed, you can achieve that prototypical high speed. You can run with larger rakes. You can negotiate low-level inclines. And you can achieve pretty high acceleration. Now, you could argue that acceleration is not prototypical and probably something you don't necessarily want anyway. So it's maybe to be debated whether that's a positive. The negatives, of course, are the significant residue deposited on the track, and that increases with speed. You get those stalls and shorts on the Pico Express points that we saw at the very start. They're very much unwanted. And you get a general poor low-speed performance and poor starting and poor stopping performance, which most modelers wouldn't like. With the Traction Tyres removed, the residue issue is addressed, and all that cleaning overhead that goes with that is addressed. There's no issue anymore in the Pico points. You could see that once I had made the adjustment here and moved the traction wheels, I got no issues at all on the Pico points. And in general, you get that improved running performance at the low end. Maybe it doesn't come across on the video so much, but running this train was a lot more realistic, a lot more prototypical looking with the Traction Tyres removed, and with running the extra bit of weight as well. The top speed, the hit you take is the top speed, is going to be falling off, and anything between 5 to 18%. You can reduce that if you add some weight. Your ability to negotiate inclines is going to be reduced, that's for sure. I didn't do any real tests on that here. As I say, there's a very minor incline on the layout itself, but it's very small. And then the size of rake, I think, would be impacted. So if you were to add another 2 or 4 cars to this, I definitely think you would probably need to look at maybe adding some additional weight to the power car. And you're into a kind of a trade-off situation there with the motor that's there, because each time you add some extra weight, you are probably going to take a hit on the maximum speed as well. And I think I must make a point that even during the sessions with the Traction Tyres installed, I have seen wheel slip with the Traction Tyres in there as well. So even with them installed, and I fancy if you were running this up an incline, you would probably see some issues with wheel slip, even with the Traction Tyres on there. There's no getting away from the need for all-wheel drive on a locomotive like this, and the benefits that gives you, and obviously having a decent weight, like a 500 gram plus weight, and having a motor that can take that weight and not degrade in performance as we're seeing this one is. This is a low cost motor, obviously, and you can see the effect of it. So in general, what am I going to do? I'm actually happy. I'm going to keep the set now because I'm happy with the performance that I'm getting. I only ever want to run with a 6-car set. I'm not going to be running with an incline. I'm not really disturbed by the fact that I can't achieve the prototypical top speed anymore. I did that. I have it recorded on video, so that's fine. I can always look at the video. But in my normal running sessions, I would probably only ever be running this at a maximum of about 50% or 60% type speed. And the improvement in low speed performance, the improvement in the stop starting, the improvement over the Pico points, and then the lack of any issues from a dirt on the track perspective wins this over for me. So I'm very pleased with the upgrade. I'm going to stick with the set now because I'm happy with it. It's not going to cause the overhead that it was causing. I'm just pleased with the results. But, there is a trade-off, and if you're happy with that trade-off, then maybe this is something you might want to consider yourself. So thanks for joining today's video. Please share your own thoughts in the comments. If you've had this set, if you've had similar issues to what I had with the set, please put that in. Have you added weight to the power car yourself? Have you played around with removing the Traction Tyres? Interested in your feedback, and certainly please put those into the comments. I'm going to be doing this again for the Class 395, which should be an easier upgrade from what I can see. So I do want to upgrade that set as well. I do have Traction Tyres on that, and I'm not happy with those. So they'll be coming off at some stage in the future, and I will do a video on that. It'll be a shorter one because I think there's less involved there. But I'm happy with this today. So hopefully this was useful. And if you're an owner of a Eurostar set, hopefully it's something that might give you some food for thought. Okay, thanks for joining. We'll hopefully see you on the next one. And in the meantime, happy modelling.